Do you want to hear what a setter had to say about one of my recent solves of his puzzle? Keep watching, and I'll let him tell you himself. That's right, today is Collaboration Day in our month of Sudoku, and I have a special guest, Tallcat, the setter of the Classic Sudoku Keii. He made a video to tell you what he was thinking when he set Keii and how close I got to reaching the intended solve path. I hope you enjoy this. And now, here's Tallcat.
Hi everyone, my name is Tallcat and I am the setter of the puzzle that you see on the screen. This classic Sudoku, which is called Keii, is an homage to the brilliant constructor Shai, who has had a number of classic Sudokus featured on Kraken Cryptic and other YouTube Sudoku channels. In many of these puzzles, Shai typically highlights a single technique. For many of these puzzles, she has used established classic Sudoku techniques. However, she has also created a number of her own specific techniques for solving classic Sudokus. And in creating this puzzle, I wanted to pay tribute to that. In fact, the name Keii actually is Japanese for honor and respect. And I thought that was very appropriate, particularly as a number of Shai's puzzles also have a Japanese title. In solving this puzzle, Timberlake used a number of classic techniques to find a solve path throughout. And after watching his solve video, I reached out to him to say that while I found it very interesting, he actually did not use the intended logic that I had built into the puzzle. With that, Timberlake actually suggested I come up with this setter response type video to show what the intended logic was. And so that's what I'm going to do today. In addition to that, I'm also going to show a couple of different ways that other solvers visualize the step that I intended to take. So with that, let's take a look at the puzzle. So one of the things that I had hoped in setting this puzzle that would serve as telegraphing is the fact that there are only a single 8 or 9 in this grid as a way to hint that these are perhaps the digits you should be thinking about. So what does this 8 or 9 do? Well, if you look in column 1 and if you look in row 9, you can see there are actually only 2 spots left for the 8 and the 9. Continuing on from this, you can see we have a naked single 7 in the corner here. It sees all of the other digits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 and 9. And this leaves a 1, 6 pair, a 2, 5 pair, and a 3, 4 pair in the box. In addition to that, if you follow these 6s here and these 6s here, we have a hidden single 6 up in the corner. If you look in column 6 here, 1 and 5 can't be here, 1 and 5 also can't be here. That gives you a hidden pair 1, 5, and these are 7, 8, 9, triple. This one can't be 7. Let's just fill in this box, 2, 4, 6. If you now look at the 7s, you can also see this places 7 in box 5. And that brings us to this position. Now, again, emphasizing that the single 8 and 9 forcing these pairs into column 1 and row 9, I wanted you to think about what this might mean, and is there some way we can connect this? And indeed, in his solve video, Timberlake noted this and thought that this was going to be something, there was going to be something built around 8 and 9s to look for. Now, given the arrangement of this, there aren't any real strong or even real weak links between these. However, when you actually look at the arrangement, and I'm going to highlight these two both converge onto this square. So when we think of the options for this square, well, it can be a 1, it can't be 2, can't be 3, can't be 4, 5, 6, or 7, but it can be 8 or 9. So we're left with only 3 options for this square, 1, 8, or 9. So how do we advance from this? What are we supposed to think about in order to eliminate this further? So having the 8 and 9s here, we can immediately see that if this is an 8 or a 9, it is going to force the same digit in this diagonal pattern. So let's imagine it's an 8. We get 8 in this diagonal pattern. This is going to be the same if it is a 9 as well. You would end up with the 9s in this diagonal pattern. But how is that a problem? How is it going to break? So we have to think a little more here. We can see that if we follow this 8 upwards into box 2, together with this 8, it is going to force 8 into row 3 of box 2. Similarly, if we follow 8 into box 6, again, the combined 8s force it into column 7 of box 6. And now I hope you can see we have a problem. The 8s in box 3 are completely ruled out of all of these squares, and so the only square that would be viable to be an 8 would be this one, except there's already a 5 there. So this isn't going to work. I hope you can see from identical logic that this would also be the same with 9s, but let's just fill those in to show you. Again, the interacting 9s would force 9 into this row of box 2 and this column of box 6. And again, 9 is ruled out of all of these squares, and the 5 prevents a 9 from being there. So in total, let's cycle back, this means that this square cannot be 8 or 9, and so must be a 1. So when I built the puzzle, this was how I intended it to be visualized. But a couple of other solvers came up there with their own way of looking at it and addressing this question. So there was one solver who looked specifically just at these two cells. I'm going to highlight those in red. They asked the question, well, if these two were different, so if one was an 8 and one was a 9, you can see that this is automatically going to be a 1. But what would happen if they were the same? Well, if they were both 8, if they were both 8, this would force a 9 here, this would force a 9 here. And if you now look at column 8, where is the 9 going to go? Well, it can't go here, it can't go here, and so it must go here. And so this square still sees both the 8 and the 9, and so must be a 1. And again, if you replace this with a 9, the logic is identical. It would place an 8 here, and this cell would still see both the 8 and 9, and so it's going to be a 1. That was an interesting way of visualizing it, I thought, slightly different to how I had intended it, but valid nonetheless. And the final way that I'm going to show you that a different solver visualized this is going to focus really on column 8, and is sort of a hybrid of the two others, is that asking if this square is 8, or indeed if it's 9. Again, we have the 8s on our diagonals, but if you look at column 8 now, you can see that 8 cannot be placed anywhere. This 8 rules it out of this square, this 8 rules it out of that square, and this 8 rules it out of this square, and so the puzzle is broken. All this essentially converges on the same deduction, which is that the central square, row 5, column 5, cannot be 8 or 9, and so must be a 1. From here, we can see it's going to have some effects. This 1 is going to affect the 5 and 1, and is going to place a few digits until you get to maybe the mid-sol sticking point of about here. Now, I just wanted to show this again because in his solve, Timberlake found a slightly different way around from looking at this, involving a longer chain. And again, it was slightly different from what was intended, so I just wanted to show how I had intended this. Once you have reached this stage, the important point, which I think Timberlake had realized, is that you have this 289 triple in box 9, and importantly, the 2 is in these two cells, therefore ruling out the 2 from here. Now, the step that Timberlake had missed, and I think some of you had spotted in the comments in that video, is that this does leave a 389 triple in the box with the 3 here in one of these two squares. This now impacts box 2. It rules out the 3 from here. You end up with an 8-9 pair, which will place the 3 and 4. And this now is key and will unravel a lot more of the puzzle. For example, you can see that takes the 4 out of here, places the 4. This impacts the 3 and the 4. That places this 5 and the 2 and the 5, and so on and so on. I'm not going to go on and continue the whole solve, but you can see how this figuring out this step has now basically opened up the puzzle and ultimately will lead you to the completed grid, which I'm showing here. So that is really the end of this selling video. I just want to thank Timberlake for suggesting this as an idea and giving me the chance to record it. I hope this explanation of what my intended logic was just gives a bit of a peek behind the curtain in what goes into selling this puzzle. I hope you were able to try the puzzle and figure out the path through it as Timberlake did, and I hope you enjoyed it.